I consider myself a very lucky person. I'm so grateful for my relationships, my family, and my career, and so many opportunities that I've had. And I'm just so blessed and happy to introduce you to a very dear friend of mine who I've worked with and have stayed in touch with for over 20 years. Her name is Cyndi Butz. She is one of the most incredibly talented women I know. She has shown me truly what life is about and what is important, which is family and friends and staying true to yourself. Cyndi has gone through some very challenging times in her life, and through it all, she has maintained a positive attitude and a lust for life. She is just an incredible human. And when I talk about badass rock stars, Cyndi falls in that category. So please welcome to our Storytellers podcast, Cyndi Butz. Cyndi Butz, welcome. Thank you so much for making time to be with us today. I know you're very busy.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Jody. Thank you.
And you're in New York right now. You're residing in Seattle, Washington. What brings you to New York?
I am in New York for work. I'm working on a show right now. It's a new show called Most Expensivest for Vice TV. So we're shooting about 4 episodes in New York right now.
That sounds like a very busy, challenging show, but we'll talk more about it. I want to just roll back the clock a little bit and talk about sort of our beginning. Of course, I have spoken with a number of, as Mary Beth Anderson refers to us as Banyanites.
Yes.
We met over 20 years ago, Cyndi.
Yes, 1999, October 1999.
Crazy. And, you know, we've stayed in touch. We've seen each other. We have a lot of love for one another. And our family always says that we're nuts for butts. That's our motto, as you know.
I do know that, and I love it.
Daryl wanted me to make sure I told you, remind her that we're nuts for butts. As we get further into our conversation, our listeners will understand more about why we have that sort of motto and cheer for you. So we worked together at Banyan. We worked on a number of different shows. We worked on, I think the one main show we worked on together at Banyan was when we worked together on Fabulous Cakes, where we physically were in the field together.
Yes.
I really think that I gained 10 pounds on that shoot, I have to say.
10 amazing pounds. I mean, how lucky were we to get to taste those cakes?
I mean, it was my goal to taste every piece of cake and every type of icing that they had. I don't know if you remember, but the pastry chefs would give me buttercream in the bag, and I would just sit there and eat the buttercream. You know, it's amazing I don't have diabetes. That's all I
got you through the day. I mean, we just needed something to get us through, and that's what did it. That's fine.
Yeah. But you did a number of shows for Banyan, some of which, when I was reading your resume, I didn't even know you worked on. I knew you worked on Trading Spaces. I knew you worked on Motherhood. Like, I just didn't, there were so many other shows. How easy was that for you to shift from one show to another? And that sort of parlays into just being a freelancer, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was the perfect training for being a freelancer, shifting shows. I think what made it easy was that it was all Banyan. So internally, I knew the process for the company. I knew everything that needed to be done internally and who to go to get what I needed. So whether I was a producer, associate producer, or production manager, whatever, that was what made it really easy. I think the hard part is every show is different with the structure, its story, and every network head had a different idea of how the show should be done. So it was just a matter of falling into their pattern and what they wanted for the show and then making it happen. I mean, in the end, you're making a story, you're telling a story for Banyan Productions. So I couldn't have asked for an easier way to learn the process, because going into freelance, it's exactly what you have to do. But I loved that it changed. I loved the different stories and the different shows. That's what kept me going.
Because you really worked on a diverse
Yeah.
group of shows. Some were for, DIY, some were for HGTV, some were for, you've done Food Network shows. So even though the network changes, you still had that overarching umbrella of Banyan. And another thing that MB and I had just talked about was that the culture there was so different that it lifted us up. And whereas I'm sure, working for a lot of other companies, that's not always the case.
It's not. I think what we had was really special and rare at Banyan. And I don't know that you'll find it again, because they had, I think at one point, almost 20 shows in-house. And you just keep rotating the staff, which means you're working with the same people next to each other every day for 3, 5, 7, 10 years. And you become so close, and you get to help each other through your jobs, even if you weren't working on the same show. I remember jumping in and helping a couple people on their shows just because they needed the help. But you go through so much in production. I don't even have to tell you. When they say prepare for the worst, you really do have to prepare for it and just take it in stride. But when you do that every day and every year with the same people next to you, it's so amazing to be able to have the chance to do that. And I'm so grateful for that.
I always, even today, when I'm working with people for an extended period of time, I call it's almost like choreography. It's almost like, we're dance partners and we're used to dancing together, no matter what music is playing. We've figured out a way to make sure our steps are in sync. I always look at it like that. So after Banyan, you went off to you were working on Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
I didn't work on that one.
You didn't work on that? Didn't you go out to work with Denise? I thought that's what you were working on.
I lived in her house. And we worked in the same studio in LA. But I was working on a show for ABC Family called Back on Campus, and she was working on Extreme Makeover. She did offer me a job on Extreme Makeover, which I turned down for whatever reason. I don't remember. But I was living in her house for 3 months, and we were going to the same studio every day, but we did not work on the same show.
I don't know. I guess that's why I thought, because I remember visiting you out there, and Keystone was the primary, local production company. So we collaborated on that because I was working for Keystone at the time. And Tony Danza was the host of that show, right?
Oh my gosh, I remember that. Yeah.
What was it called? Back on Campus, right?
No, he wasn't he did a show exactly like it. My Back on Campus, he did not do, but he was doing a show exactly like it where he went back and taught a college class. But it wasn't the show that I was working on. Mine was reality, where the 4 parents went back to school with their students, daughters and sons, at Drexel University. So we shot it at Drexel in Philadelphia. And then I went to California to be the post-production supervisor. I followed the production through. So
I don't know why I thought Tony Danza was working on that show as well.
It was the exact same time, but it was not our show.
Crazy.
Because I remember joking that he stole it from us somehow.
Formulaic, though, right? When you talk about television, especially unscripted, reality, whatever terminology, we want to call it.
Yeah.
There is a certain level of, let's just say, copycatting. I'm going to use that term. Sure. But can be formulaic, but it can also be, if something works, if it's not broken, why fix it kind of thing. How many HGTV shows are out there even to this day that emulated, the Trading Spaces world and, with a little bit of a twist, right?
Yeah.
So after all of those shows, you and I ended up back on another show together, which was so much fun to work on together. And that was Restaurant Impossible, which you continue to do some freelance work for. Is it still in production, or are they on hiatus right now?
They're on hiatus at this moment that I'm speaking to you, but they are still in production. They get little orders here and there, 10 more episodes, 13 more episodes, but they're still going. The ratings are still great.
And 10 and 13 episodes in this day and age is a lot.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, as well as I do, networks today, whether it's cable or traditional, they're not given big buy orders. They're, maybe 6, maybe 4.
Yeah, 6 is good.
Yeah.
We used
not
to get
like the days
5 for Trading Spaces, 65.
I was going to say, not like the days of Trading Spaces or Wedding Story when they would order 100 episodes.
Yeah.
We were like, woohoo, like we know we have a job for, a good long period of time. It's not like that anymore. So what is it like being, an independent producer, a freelancer, a subcontractor, whatever term, fits the bill at the time? What is it like?
It's stressful because you're always looking for your next gig. I really want to enjoy whatever I'm working on, but there's always a point at the end of my day where I'm like, okay, well, I still have to think 2 months ahead. Where am I going to be working? Who am I going to be working with? And it all comes back to the Banyan Nights. We've connected. So everybody's gone in so many different directions. We've been able to connect and work on other shows together, which is great. So, you start reaching out to the people, you start reaching out to the former companies you've worked for, and you hope somebody's shooting something. You hope that they need something. I've been, I also don't box myself into one position. I would love to be a supervising producer everywhere I go. I would love to be a senior producer everywhere I go, but I've been doing some production supervising just because it's work and I know how to do it. I've done it. So you got to be really flexible and you just got to stay on your toes. I think, I've been doing this for 23 years now, and this past couple of years, I've started to get the phone calls, which is nice. That's always a nice feeling when people are starting to call you and you don't have to call them. So it's a
different world. It definitely, that sweating factor of, oh my God, they're never going to call me again, especially if you say no, because you're booked on something. They're not going to call me back. There's a lot less of that now, that you have a track record. But, when I think about when I first met you at Banyan too, I remember walking through the front building, and you were like at the reception desk.
I was the receptionist.
And I remember, because that was how you got in the door, right? Yes. We all need to get in the door.
Yes.
And I remember walking past you one day. Of course, I fell in love with you the minute I met you. And you had like a pile of headshots on your desk. And I'm like, what the F are you doing with headshots? Wait, is there something I need to know? And you were pursuing an acting career. Talk about that a little bit. And how do you marry the two of those?
Well, actually, it worked out very well for me marrying the two. And honestly, I only went the direction I went because that's where the paycheck was. But when I went to college, I had 2 majors. I majored in theater arts and video communications. So I did some acting in college. And then after college, I did a little bit of community theater, and I love acting, but can't really make too much of a living at it. So I kind of went into the direction of production. I started out as receptionist, which was the best decision I ever made because I was the one person that knew everybody in the building. I knew all the producers, all the executive producers. I knew all the network people that came in for meetings. I knew what they liked to drink. I knew what food they liked. I had the advantage of knowing every single person and they knew me. So it was very easy for me to get onto a show. There was actually a little bit of a bidding war for me. I'm going to brag a little. But I got the show and then it went from there. But yeah, I really wanted to do acting. And recently I've been getting that itch again, but you got to go where the paycheck is right now because I got a family to support. So, I will say how it marries together is when I took 5 years off of working in television to do corporate work in Seattle because my wife and I were having a baby and I wanted to be home for the first 5 years. I didn't want to travel. So I did a lot of corporate work. And in Seattle, we have Microsoft and Amazon and T-Mobile. We have all the big corporations. So when we're doing corporate videos, every once in a while, you need somebody to stand in and be an actor, quote unquote. So I got to do a lot of on-screen time for those videos, which was fun. So it kind of got me back into being on camera and acting again.
Is that where some of those pictures are from on your website? No, you're wearing scrubs or, I saw you in a police uniform. I loved it. It. That must have been so much fun for you too.
Yeah, it is fun. A lot of fun.
So, when we talk about, having an idea or an ideal job. So you were willing to say, okay, I just want to get in the door and I want to get started. What did you think was going to happen in your mind? You were taking a job as a receptionist. All along, you knew like what your trajectory was going to be. That was always your plan?
Yes. I wanted to work on TV shows. I didn't know if that meant reality TV or scripted TV. I knew I wanted to work on TV shows. And I knew if I got into the door at a production company, and I knew Banyan, anybody in Philadelphia knew Banyan. I knew if I got in
the time, they were really the only game in town.
They really were. And I just needed to get in. I knew once I got in, this personality and smile was going to take me everywhere I needed to go. So I got in the door and I got on shows, and the rest is history.
You know, when you were in school, you went to Beaver College.
I did.
Which is now called Arcadia.
Arcadia University.
Right. Yep. And when you started your path, did you have mentors? I mean, I know, you're very close with your family, and I'm sure you had mentors in your family. Because listen, when I told my dad I didn't want to go into because he ran his own company and he wanted me to go in it, I said, no, I want to be a TV producer. He's like, no, you do not want to be a TV producer. He really tried to talk me out of it. He was always supportive, but he had also been in advertising and knew the difficulty and some of the shenanigans that go on. And so who were your mentors?
It's funny that you say that. I want to really quick. I went to Beaver College to be a physical therapist because they're one of the best schools in the nation for it. And I was an athlete. I got injured in high school, went through therapy, and I loved it. When I sat down and saw how many science classes I had to take, I'm like, that's not going to work for me. So I switched to communications, and my dad had a fit. He's like, that's it. You're never going to make a real paycheck. And then fast forward to a few months later, I get involved in theater and I start stage managing, and then I love it. So I add that as a major as well. And my dad's like, great, you're literally just killing your career and you're not even through your first year of college. My mom, on the other hand, said, well, there's no other way you're going to work with Nancy McKeon if you don't get into television. Because that's literally why I wanted to be in television. Sitting and watching The Facts of Life was it. I wanted that. So she was completely supportive, did everything she could to support it. I mean, my mom taught me everything I know about working hard and getting to where you want to go, believing in yourself and knocking down the walls and not following the normal path. So in that sense, she's always going to be my real mentor in life and everything I do. But I think, I went to college. I worked in Novel Stages in Philadelphia. It was a little theater company in Philadelphia. They weren't around for very long, but I
never heard of them.
I got to be around some really amazing actors, David Urrutia and Clista Townsend, who taught at my college as professors, were also in Jesus' Son, the movie with Jared Leto, I believe his name is.
Wow.
They had some really amazing acting credits to their name. Getting to watch them on stage and perform and learn the backstage stuff and how to be around actors and how to help the environment, that was an amazing experience for me. So I do think going back to college, my mentors were at Novel Stages, and I'm really thankful for that opportunity.
That's amazing. And I know you're really close with Mark Summers, who we work with at Restaurant Impossible. It was Mark Summers Productions. And Mark has always been a huge Cyndi Butz fan. I know you're close with Robert Irvine, and I'm sure that they've also been great supporters of you as, just an incredible human being that you are.
Yes, they have been amazing.
So, you're a gifted storyteller. Do you think that that's what keeps you relevant and keeps you getting more work?
Absolutely. I love telling stories. I love being creative. I love that my mind, it doesn't like to stay in one thing for too long. So working in television, working on a set every day is perfect for me because it's never going to be the same. I adjust really quick to whatever needs to be adjusted. I thrive in that kind of environment. And I think that's one thing Robert loves about people is someone who just takes the initiative, does their job, and is really good at pulling out all the little stories that you don't see on the surface to make it a better show. When you go back to Video Village after doing an interview and you see Robert wiping a tear from his eye, you know you did your job right. But that's what I love. That's my passion, is getting to know these people and finding their story and finding a way to make it entertaining for others to enjoy. And of course, Mark Summers, I watched him growing up. I watched Double Dare all the time growing up, and he and I are really good friends now. And he's really taken the time to sit with me and talk to me about the industry and the other things that maybe I don't understand, like the business side. And it's not just about the production, but it's about the higher ups and how you're representing everybody up here and not just on the surface representing the show. So I have a lot of respect for both of them. They've both been very good to me. But I do think that my knack for storytelling, I just love, I mean, as you can tell, I love to talk. So I love to tell stories.
And isn't that just the best thing about our job is, I've had interns and I've, spoken in colleges and things like that. Mm-hmm. And even with my own kids, as my children, you have to really enjoy what you're doing in order to get up every day and do it. And this is something I would say that I preach to people, because the worst thing you can do for yourself is take a job or take a project. And look, as a contractor, even as a business owner, there are projects that I may not necessarily want to work on that, it's a slow time period. I need to bring money in to continue growing my company, to continue to be able to support the documentary projects that I'm doing and my podcast. Yes. And so if I didn't love what I did every day, it would really be tough to get out of it. It really would be. And listen, there were many times where I said to myself, I got to get out of this business. I can't stand, being on my feet 16 and 18-hour days, because it is not for anyone who doesn't have thick skin and stick-to-itiveness and self-confidence and self-awareness, because most of the time you're not getting a pat on the shoulder saying, great job. No. Most of the time. Mark would tell us, and Robert, and there are people you and I have worked with who will tell you, but I would put it out there that that's not the norm.
It's not.
So you're never quite sure where you stand with people sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you need to know within yourself and also, just drawing the line of what you're comfortable doing and what you're not comfortable doing. I mean, have there been jobs that you've walked off and said, I'm not doing this anymore, or somebody's approached you about a job and you thought, who's the talent? Who's the director? Who am I working with? No, I'm not going to do that. Have you had that experience?
I will say, yes, I've had the experience that there's maybe 2 or 3 people, if they approached me about a job, I would never work for them again. And that's just because they were just, it's not that they just weren't nice people. They just are in it for the wrong reasons, and they treat people poorly. And I don't need a paycheck that bad that I need to go through that again. When I was younger, sure, I would probably do it. Have I ever walked off of a job or ended a contract early? No, I don't believe in doing that. I do believe, and I have in the past, if I felt uncomfortable, if I felt like the production was not going the way it should, I will absolutely talk to the showrunner, executive producer, supervising producer, and say, look, I really feel like this is making me uncomfortable. I don't want to have to do this scene specifically the way you're asking. Can we find another way to do this? And I would say 90% of the time, when you sit down and actually talk about the problem, they'll fix it. And maybe it'll happen again, or maybe it won't, but at least it gets you through the contract. It gets you through the show, knowing that you were heard and that you spoke your mind. Because when we make reality TV, there are lines that can be crossed very easily to make a quote unquote good show. And I think morally, you have to sometimes think, we have to do this differently. We have to do this shot a little bit differently. And I think you have to be able to speak up and say that, because you're still going to have a great show. There's still a story there. You just have to work around how you're going to do it. So I will always see through my projects. I will never quit them. That's not who I am. I would never leave my show like that. But I do have a very small list of people I just don't need to work with again. Very small.
But it leads back to having enough self-confidence and being sure of yourself
Yes.
and your intentions
Yes.
to be able to advocate. And you make a really good point, because in this industry or any place that you go to work, or even in your own life, you have to be able to advocate for yourself in a calm, respectful manner.
Yes.
That's not always coming back at you with the same way. Sometimes there's a very high level of frustration because there's a lot of moving parts in what we do. Especially, like, let's just go back to Restaurant Impossible. I mean, that show is all about, you're prepared, you have ideas about what you want to do, and then you get in that restaurant and all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
I'll never forget. Well, Justin Leonard, who works with Robert now,
yes.
he was working with me on a shoot, and we met there and we had lunch because we wanted to scout and check it out and meet the owner. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden this mouse runs across the floor. And I had the kids sitting at another table. So I was trying to keep them there so that they wouldn't see the mouse and react, because they were pretty, still kind of young at the time. And Justin and I looked at you and we're like, holy shit, there's a mouse that just ran across the floor. Then another one. I picked up my feet and I just grazed his legs under the table. And I swear to God, he launched. He almost flew out of his chair because he thought the mouse was on it. Well, we ended up going there, and I had no idea that this place was infested. When we got there, we knew there were mice, clearly, because they ran across the floor. But then once Tom Burry and his guys started tearing out the seating, and there were just dead mice everywhere. Stuck to glue boards. I mean, it was just disgusting. So, talk about having to just shift in a second. It's like we had all these ideas, but now everything has to change based on, okay, we got to get an exterminator. We've got to do this. And you've been through the gambit. You get it. Oh, yeah. So how important is flexibility, thinking on your feet, and not getting stuck in your own head about what's supposed to be just because, you had it written in a document.
Exactly. And how much time do we spend writing those documents ahead of time? We prep like crazy. We interview people, we scout locations, we have pictures, we have stories, we know what we're doing, right? And you're absolutely right. You show up the first day, you don't know that the walk-in is going to be molded and corroded with all these things, and it's not usable. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen out there. So I think, like I said, one of the things about my personality, and I think what makes a really great producer, is that you are able to see the squirrel run by and not just say, ooh, squirrel, but tell that squirrel's story. Now you have a new story to tell. And that's sort of what keeps it fresh, right? You have a new story, you're going in a new direction, and then it ends up being so much better than what you thought you were going to have. But if you don't know that going in, you're not in the right business, because I've yet to be on any shoot, as simple as it may seem, that has not taken a hard turn. I just haven't. And if you have, please tell me, because maybe I'll try that once. I don't know.
Not in the unscripted world. And even in, even things that are scripted, shit happens, and you have to be able to turn on a dime and not lose your cool. The talent, the EP, the showrunner, and come over to you and say, okay, this is the direction I want to go in, make it happen. Now you haven't prepped for this new thing, but you need to just on a second's notice, make changes and say, okay, I'm going to make this work. Being able to make split-second decisions in a moment that things are happening in front of you does keep things fresh. I think it keeps us young, and it keeps the show moving forward, because we did get a lot of people that say, oh, it's really formulaic. We know Robert's going to fix the restaurant. We know he's going to say, you're going to kill somebody, but you didn't know what all those pieces were going to fall, how they were going to fall in line. And there were many of them. I mean, I remember even another one in Bucks County where the guy had a whole farm in his backyard. And Robert's like, he says, get me a hazmat suit. I'm going back there. I'm like, hazmat suit? Where the F am I finding a hazmat suit? It's like, boom, I had to find it.
Yes.
There he went. He put it on. He goes traipsing back there. And there's, like all this animal feces everywhere. He's yelling at the owner of the restaurant. You don't even have shoe covering on your feet. And you're coming out here and you're taking things. And then you're walking in the restaurant. Oh. That was, I think, one of the first times we ever used one of those devices where we look for microorganisms in a black light. So we do have to shift on a dime, but it keeps us on our toes.
It keeps us on our toes. And speaking of toes, I went through so many pairs of shoes on that show because I threw so many shoes away after Restaurant Impossible.
Really?
Just some of the things in the kitchens were just.
Oh yeah.
I did not want to bring that home. No.
That's interesting. I never got rid of any of my shoes.
Well, maybe it's the OCD.
Wipe them down. I definitely wiped them down when I got to the hotel and everything, but I never threw them out. I thought you were going to say from running around so much because we did do a lot of running. I think I'm going to need hearing aids from that show, from having different headsets on. Robert in this ear and the crew in this ear. Yeah. You know what? I have to say, and people will ask me this. I actually miss working on that show. It's insane. Mm-hmm. It was exhausting. We were up at, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, working, 14, 16-hour days, then partying, having dinner at like 11 o'clock at night and staying up. I don't know, that family feeling that we had out in the field was just so great.
And that's it too. You work on a show and you are family because you are working all these long days. By the time you get back to the hotel, everything's closed. So sometimes you convince the hotel to sit you and feed you a meal, but you're eating with the same people you've been working with. And but
when you walk in with Robert Irvine and they're closing down the kitchen, how quickly do they open that freaking kitchen
very quickly.
All of a sudden, like there's a feast for, 20. We did have a lot of fun together. Yeah. So, as you move forward in your career, you're back to traveling. Mm-hmm. You have a family. You talked about that earlier. You have a beautiful wife and an amazing daughter.
Thank you.
And how challenging is it? Like, you're out in the field, you're away now for a couple of weeks. You want to be home by a certain time. That balance, how do you find balance working in this profession?
Well, you said it earlier, it's a dance. Even at home, it's a dance. And we make it work. I have a great wife. She's very supportive of what I do, knowing that when I'm on the road, she's going to be by herself. But we have a 6-year-old who wants to help around the house. So she knows when mama's away, she's got to step up a little bit and help. And she does. It doesn't make it easier on the heart. I mean, we miss each other, but I do try to work it in my daily schedules to get an evening call, sometimes read stories at night. If that means I have to step aside on set for about a half an hour, I'll do that. And I'll make sure that I work it into my schedule to do that because it's important. But it's a dance. It's making sure prepping as much stuff as I can before I leave. So Becky doesn't have to worry about it, my wife, and, making sure we plan family things when I know I'm going to be home. So I'm not missing too much. It's not easy, but I love what I do. And I think that because my daughter sees that, she understands why I do it. I think it's so important that you have to see your parents enjoy their work. Otherwise, it takes a piece of their personality away. Because I did have that for a while when I was home working with the corporate jobs. I didn't get much storytelling there. I had to do what the companies wanted. And my daughter saw that and she fed on that. So I think it's more important this way that she sees it.
It's interesting because my kids, they're now, if you can believe it, 22 and 21.
I can't believe it.
But both of them, I think, felt at some point, mommy and daddy, because Daryl, he's a DP, he owns his own company. Mommy and daddy are away a lot. We have somebody who's helping take care. I think when they were younger, it was just maybe a little bit more confusing because we're both in the business. Mm-hmm. As they've gotten older, and I mean, even when, Ben was running audio on shoots.
So cute.
When he was like 10. He insisted he wanted to carry that mixer on him. They both now have been out on set with us. They physically have had roles that they've taken on, paying jobs. I just took Ben with me to Savannah, Georgia. I'm working on a documentary, and I took him with me. He was the DP. He did everything. It was a one-man band situation, and Ethan, now is working for a media company in Canada, which is crazy. But I do believe that as they got older, they appreciated the fact that their parents were passionate about what we were doing. And they could feel, they felt our frustration at times, but they could also feel that dedication to our craft. And they've learned that. And I do think that will take them a long way in life, to be able to witness that firsthand. How'd you handle working from home during the pandemic?
We had to come up with a schedule. So we set up a little table for Bronte, our daughter, in the kitchen, so with an iPad, so she could have class, because they were still doing class via Zoom. And then one of us would sit at the kitchen table and work. If we had a meeting, we would go in the office and make the call, but one of us would spend half the day in the kitchen, and the other, then we would switch halfway through, trying to eat lunch together, which was kind of cute to have lunch together. But we had to make sure that we split our days, so we had privacy for our calls, but somebody was always there to help her with her class and do whatever she needed.
So you were able to work through the pandemic?
Yes, because I was still doing the corporate job. So there was always corporate stuff to do. So I was very lucky that I didn't have to stop down working.
That's great.
Yeah.
But that is challenging.
But it is challenging working from home in general when you have a kid. But think about it. She was 3.5, 4 years old. This is what she knew. So when she didn't have school, we had a schedule, and this is what you do at this time, just like school. So she was very good about checking her schedule and doing her thing by herself.
She is so cute. Oh my gosh. She's and smart. Smart.
Very smart. She is. Thank you so much. She's very smart.
I mean, she's got two rock star badass parents. That's for sure.
I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
No, you can't. You don't have the leg to stand on in that argument. So, okay, now I'm going to totally shift, because you actually have 2 careers, maybe more, 3 if we include your acting. So you are a professional football player. Well, you played, you were injured. You're now a women's professional football league coach.
Correct. Yes. And also the CEO of the team. So I run the team and I coach.
Seattle Majestics, right?
Seattle Majestics. Yes.
Okay. So everyone listening needs to follow the Seattle Majestics. Okay. And just keep following them, because Cyndi is a rock star coach. Now, you've always been an athlete. Since I've known you. You were always an athlete. You were always busy running. You never sat in a chair. You sat on one of those big balls that you rolled around in. I was always like, why are you on that ball? You're like, it's good for your core. I'm like, I can't even sit up straight, but football is really hard on your body. But it's also hard mentally, right? And just not just physical, it's emotional, and it's mental strength.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about your football career and how does that help you with your inner strength, your motivation, courage to move forward during adversity? Because all of those little things, they're not that little, but they all impact your entire life, right? They create, this inner strength that not everybody has.
Yes. And that's how I coach. I tell my players that what you're going to learn on the football field, you can carry into life, because it is about challenging yourself physically and mentally. It's about facing fears. It's also about appreciating your accomplishments and doing things that not everybody does every day. So you need to celebrate that.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And I think that's how I coach. I want to prepare them for the field and for life. And, I've always loved football. Every woman in my family has loved football. Since I was 5 years old, you'd ask me what I want to do when I grow up. I want to play football. And for so many years, everybody said, oh, you'll never play. You're a girl. My mom never said that. My mom never said that. She said, if you want to play, you'll play one day. And sure enough, I did.
You sure did.
Yeah. So I did play for 7 seasons. I took 7 years off after the 4th season. I played in New York. I played in Philadelphia, won a championship in Philadelphia.
Liberty Bells.
There, wear the ring.
That was the Liberty Bells,
Liberty
right?
Bell. Yeah.
We used to come see you at those games. Yeah. In fact, Ben, remember he videotaped.
Yes, I still have that one.
And he was 10 or 12 then or something.
Ben and Daryl were videoing the game. They did a great job. It was one of the best. Yeah. And then I had my knee reconstructed, partially because of football, partially because of genetics. And then, of course, you think reconstructed knee, you're not going to go back to play, but I did. After 7 years, I needed it. I missed it. And I went back and I played for 3 more years. And then I went into coaching just because I've had so many breaks and bruises. I'm just tired. My body is tired. So now I coach and I love it. And I run the team, which is crazy to think about.
But as a player and even as a coach, how do you prepare yourself mentally for a game? And how is that similar or dissimilar for preparing yourself mentally to go out and lead on a production job?
Well, just like we said, for production, you show up and anything can happen and you have to change course in the drop of a hat. You just have to be ready. As prepared as you were, you have to be ready to change and adjust. Just like a football game, you can prepare and watch film on the other team and you can be ready. And then they put in a different player or they move positions or they put in a new play you've never seen before. You have to be ready to recognize it and adjust. And I think it's what I like to do as a coach is try to recognize it as soon as I can and adjust as quick as I can, because the more you try to adjust, the better chance you'll have to beat what they're doing. If you take too long to recognize it and adjust, you're going to lose the game. As a coach to my players, I tell them I want them to mess up. I want them to make that mistake. I want them to see, oh, this isn't the way we thought it was going to be. I can't believe I just missed that play. Understand that, oh, I missed that play. I know how to fix that. So not to get down on yourself because you made a mistake. Nobody steps on the field and is perfect. No coach is going to be perfect through a whole game, but to recognize when something didn't go right, that's actually the way you want it to go because you have a chance to fix it and correct it. So, don't get down on yourself. Just move on and say, I know what I'm going to do next. Oh, that didn't work either. I know what I'm going to do next. So I think it's a process of building yourself up mentally. The physical stuff, we can all control that. We can work out, we can eat right, we can do what we're supposed to do. That's in place. But the mental stuff is a constant factor that's changing on the football field and in production. And in life, right? Head on a swivel. I'm a linebacker coach. So we always teach head on a swivel. Know what's coming from every direction at all times. That's life. That's production.
It sure is.
If you can get them to understand that, and if you can coach that and teach that, they're going to be great. They're going to be great players. They're going to be great people. So I'm not about the score at the end of the game. I'm about how did you fix yourself? How are you 1% better today than you were yesterday? And how are you going to be 1% better tomorrow? Because that's the little victory I want them to know. They're not going to make millions of dollars playing football. It's not in our foreseeable future. They're out there because they're challenging themselves. They're out there because it's a passion. And I want them to enjoy it, but I also want them to get better and take that into their life and say, I did this amazing thing and I survived it. I can face anything.
That is amazing. That's such great advice too. And, building up people's confidence and their own personal, their vision of the way they see themselves. It's not just confidence. It's like, wow, you know what? I can do that. I am a badass, Now, Why do you think you made a comment that, they're never going to make a lot of money as professional football players? Women's professional football is not widely known about, is it?
No.
And why not? The WNBA is huge. Yeah. And I played basketball as I was very athletic too. I didn't play football. I did a bunch of other things. But why do you think that women's football is not something that's, catching on to mainstream television and things like that?
I will say I started playing in 1999, and where we are now, we have made great strides. You can actually stream us now. Our games can be streamed every Saturday when we're in season, which is amazing. That's something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. But I think there's a lot of factors. One, the WNBA is successful, and think about how long it took for it to really catch on. It really struggled in the beginning. Same with professional hockey for women.
Yeah.
I mean, professional soccer and hockey for that matter, but professional soccer, the first league folded and then they came back. I think they have the backing of the WNBA has backing with the NBA. The fact that they can say WNBA is very helpful. We can't say WNFL. The NFL does not back women's tackle football. They don't. They won't. Some teams in certain cities are very accepting. For instance, the New Orleans Saints, for 3 years, let us use their practice indoor facility to do a women's world game for a whole week. And some of their players came out and cheered us on. They're very accepting. They love that. The owners of the Saints, they're all in. Some teams want nothing to do with us. I live in a city that we've tried and have not succeeded. So I think until we have that actual full backing, it's not going to be where it could be. What I will say now is with all the flag football that's very popular, it's giving women the opportunity as girls to play the game, to know the game and to understand the game. And now Seattle Public Schools last year, they've decided to make women's flag football an actual sport. So now they have a flag football team. And that's
amazing. So we had talked about this as well, that all the expenses and everything, there's no money flowing through the team or the league. How do you survive? I mean, how does a women's football league survive when there is no financial support for it?
The players pay their fees. I am the CEO of a team. I do not take one dime. I'm a coach. We do not take one dime. All the coaches are volunteers. Any admin, they're all volunteers. We try to get sponsors. We try to get donations. Anybody can donate. We try to do fundraisers. But when you do fundraisers and you try to get the word out, you find that it's just your family and friends who are going to the games anyway. They're basically paying for the fundraiser. So it's kind of hard to keep funding that. But the players put up a good bit of money to play. They have to pay for travel. They have to buy their own equipment. Whatever we can't raise, we have to divide amongst the players, and then they have to pay that. So you have to really love the game to play.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing that I think you'll find comforting when you talk about this flag football in schools. Mm-hmm. This was my 4th year as a judge for the Synopsis Media Sports Awards. Okay. So I have to watch, 30 or more submissions in different categories and, judge them.
Right.
One of the videos that I was lucky enough to see was a girls' flag football team, and it was about a football league, and they're in New Jersey. Of course, I thought of you immediately, and I loved the video because they really talked to these young women, these girls, and they were so articulate as to why it was important to them and how it was building self-esteem and confidence and things like that for their lives. And it's all, on tape, not tape anymore. I know.
It's so funny that we still do that.
It's terrible.
I do.
But it's all documented. Let's say that, because it was a documentary. What about you shooting a documentary about the Women's Football League?
In 2009, right before I went back to playing, I followed the Philadelphia Liberty Bells for a whole season, just me with my camera, the whole season. And it's sitting in a box because I'm not an editor and I don't know how to edit and I can't afford to pay an editor. So I have a whole season just shelved, there's a story waiting to be told. We've had a lot of people follow us, and the same thing happens. Even if they edit something together, nobody wants it. We've pitched it to networks. We're not giving up. We still do it. We still have stories to tell. But when you say that, some of us have done it. A lot of people have done it, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And that's the sad part.
It surprises me that there's a lack of interest. It does. I don't know why it shouldn't maybe surprise me, but
there's not a lack of interest when it comes to the women playing in the lingerie league. And that's also
wait a second. Hold the phone. There is a lingerie league where women are being tackled on the field in nightgowns.
They're wearing very, very skimpy bikini bottoms, a bikini top with little teeny tiny shoulder pads, and a little teeny tiny helmet. And I will tell you, they're athletic. I'm not saying they're not athletic, but they're playing football in their underwear and they sell out stadiums. Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. Well, there's got to be a way to get you guys some more exposure. I think it's amazing. And just how you're able, again, let's talk about finding balance. Mm-hmm. You're a mom, a wife, a producer, director, writer, actress, CEO of a professional female football team, and a coach. Yes. Do you ever sleep?
I don't. I don't sleep much, but I'm also a diagnosed insomniac, so that might actually work in my favor. I do eat. I eat constantly, on the go, constantly. But one thing that I will say is amazing about coaching women's football is my daughter only lives in a world where women play football. She doesn't know that they can she never knew it wasn't an option. I have pictures of me coaching with her in the backpack as a baby. And when she goes to practice, she runs on the field. She goes through the drills with the team. They love her. That. It's like she's got 40 sisters in it, and they just love her. She loves it. I mean, that's her world. That's her life. Friday night before a game, my wife and I are having a laminating party. I'm laminating play sheets. I'm laminating.
Oh my God. I was going to ask you about the laminating.
You know, I love my laminating, and the whole family joins in now. So
that's amazing. All right. So for people who are listening, we brought up the laminating. It was actually something I told Daryl I was going to ask you about today. So when we were working on Restaurant Impossible, and I don't have my lanyard close by, Cyndi Butz would have a laminated card. When I say a card, it was maybe the size of, I could be exaggerating, but those little wallet-sized photos that you got when you were, in high school or college graduation. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe it was a little larger.
Maybe an index card. Maybe an index card.
Maybe a small index card. But I could not believe you were able to shrink all of your notes on this laminated card, and you would wear it on your lanyard. You still doing that?
I do still do that. I put my bigger notes now on an iPad because that's a little bit easier. But I like to have my contacts close to me. If I need to reach somebody, I need to know where they are. Where are you? Where are you supposed to be right now? I put the schedule right here. So it's right here the whole time. Yeah. It's just convenience for me.
And you've been doing that for a long time, because I know I've seen it, and I was just I admired you, but I was like, oh my God, my eyes are too crappy for that. I moved right into the iPad.
Yeah.
But I do know, because, you carry around, it used to be, you had a clipboard or you had a notebook and you had all these files, and it was just like so much to carry around in your arms that, iPads really have transformed production in a lot of ways. People use iPads for teleprompters and such. So it doesn't surprise me that you're using the iPad at all, but it's a miracle to me that your eyeballs are still able to read that tiny little font, which is like,
so don't let it fool you. I'm always looking for my bifocal.
So where do you see yourself, in the next 5 years or 10 years? You have some of your own projects that you've been writing and directing, films. What's next for you?
Yes, I've done a couple films. They're on my website, cindybutz.com. One's called Killer Karaoke. So I write little short movies, act in them, direct them with some friends. I mean, that's the other part about working in this business.
In your free time.
Yeah, you make friends that all have these talents, and then you just come together and you make a cute little movie together, right? And it's fun. So I want to continue doing that. Recently, I've had a double mastectomy because of precancerous genetics and cells found in my body. I have a friend who has had a breast reduction. So for two very different reasons, we went through the same process. So we've been documenting it. So we're going to be I'm putting a documentary together of that. Hopefully that'll be done in the next few months. There's still some story to add to it, so we're not even done shooting it yet. But I feel like when something major happens in your life, as storytellers, you tell the story. So that will be a fantastic documentary. I can't wait till it's done. But I want to continue to do more of that. I also would love to get into another company like Banyan. I just want to find that place where I'm comfortable and we just make TV. That's all we do every day. We make TV. I'd love to get out of freelance, but I love having different shows. I don't want to work on a show for 20 years. I want to bounce around. I want to try different shows, meet different people, tell different stories, but I haven't found the point where I can relax and just do that without worrying about a paycheck. So that's kind of where I want to be. And until then, I'll just make some of my own fun stuff.
It's funny because when the pandemic started, we had that Zoom call that lasted for 5 hours with all these Banyan people. You were on that call.
Yes.
And, it occurred to me, just even when you said that, so many people from Banyan, and we've had this conversation at reunions or whatever, is like, can't we just start our own company and not call it Banyan, but bring that same culture in? We need to find that sugar daddy at like Discovery or Food Network to get us launched. But I think we can make that happen. Cyndi Butz.
We could. Nobody wants to do the business side of it, though. We're all like, let's do it. Who's going to do the business? Not me.
I have some people in mind for that.
Now's the time. Let's just do it.
Let's do it, girl.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
I'm all about it.
So if you were going to give somebody, advice who, is in college or someone who wants to shift their career, maybe they were in marketing or PR, or they weren't in this business at all.
Yeah.
40 years old, they said, you know what? I've always loved telling stories. And today, more than ever, we have the opportunity to tell a variety of stories and get them out there in so many different ways on IGTV, on YouTube, on, streaming services. What would your advice be? How would you explain to them the best way to go about it and about sticking to their dreams and never giving up?
Well, that's just it. It's never give up. Many times people will say, I think that would make a good show, or I think that's a great idea. I think I should do that. And maybe you're right, and maybe you're not. If it's something you're interested in pursuing, what I would say is write it down. Take some time to really sit with it. Write it out in an outline. I'm not saying it has to be a full script, like she said this and he said that. No, you don't have to know. Just write it down, outline it. What makes it important? Who are the characters? What's that point in the story where there's no turning back? And then all of a sudden, how does it end? What's the beginning, the middle, and the end? Even if it's just, I have a passion for crocheting and I want to make a show about it. Great. How does it start? Where's the middle and where's the end? What's the outcome? If you can write it out and then put it away for a couple weeks and come back to it. And if you're actually interested in what you're reading, you have something. If you look at it and say, what was I thinking? Try again. Just try again. You've got to write it out. You've got to see it on paper. You've got to have it make sense in your head before it makes sense to anybody else. But everybody has stories to tell. You could just pick up your phone and start shooting something, sure. But you need to have a little bit of an outline to know why you're doing what you're doing. It's not interesting if you're just shooting something. You got to know There's got to be a purpose behind it. If you can sit down and fully write out your purpose behind something, and in a couple of weeks it still sounds awesome, you're onto something. And then like you said, there's so many platforms out there. There's so many ways to get your stuff out there. It's very easy to buy a domain and make your own website, and then just word of mouth, start sharing your link.
YouTube is free.
YouTube is free. Exactly. So there's ways to get your stuff out there, but you want it to be interesting. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far, and it's going to be frustrating.
That brings me to my next question for you, and then we'll wrap up. But you've done quite a bit of casting, and you're scouting, and
yeah.
In your mind, in your opinion, what do you look for when you're casting talent or locations? How do you determine if it's a good story? What makes a good story in your opinion?
A good story has passion behind it. So it could be about anything. And like you said before, sometimes it's stories that you and I aren't interested in at all. But the story itself is good because there's passion. You have to find someone who believes in what the story is about, what they're doing. Why are you telling this story? And then you have to see some sort of personality in the person. You want to see them, you want to see expressions. You want to see physical expressions with their eyes, with their face, with their body, the excitement. Not so much that it's over the top, but not someone who's just so closeted in their emotions that you can't attach yourself to that story. I want you to be able to grab me from the first minute and I'm in. I want to know more because you're so passionate and you have so much to say and your body and your expressions tell me. I can know within 30 seconds of meeting someone if they're going to be good on camera or not, because you have to be good on camera. So take away the camera. Are they good? Put the camera there. Are they still good? Because then that's where the second part comes in. Then you put a camera in front of them. If they get frozen with the camera, we have some work to do. If they're just right there and even more with the expression, you have someone that should be on camera. But it's about passion, and it's just about how that person can convey their passion is what I'm looking for when I scout.
I love that. I love that because, and you and I have both, I'm sure you have, I know I have run into this situation where we casted somebody and then, the crew shows up and they're just like a deer in headlights. They're like, uh-oh. Because a lot of times people aren't necessarily fully aware of, sure, the idea of being on TV and participating in Restaurant Impossible or Trading Spaces or any of these, My First Place, House Hunters, any of these things that we've worked on. It's just like, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to do it. Then all of a sudden, 25 people descend on your property and we're laying cables and we're, excuse me, like we're taking over their life. It's not always that easy. Sometimes you're casting, you think somebody's amazing and then they just like freeze on you. But most of the time you can get a sense pretty early. And I think in the early days of casting, we really weren't putting people on camera early on. Then we started to say to people, shoot yourself.
Yes.
With a little camera. Sometimes we would send them one, or we'd say, now you say, use your iPhone or your cell phone. But I do think the casting is such an incredibly important part of any show. If I asked you, what do you think the most important role in the field is, or in a television production? Whose role is the most important? Is it the director? Is it the writer? Is it the casting person, the researcher? I mean, there's a lot of people. If you sit and watch credits on a feature film, a documentary, a TV show, unscripted or, a dramatic series, can you pick one of those positions, this role, and say, that's the most important role on the shoot?
The production manager.
Why? Why do you think that?
If the production manager is in charge of getting you the right crew, making sure when you show up to location that you have all your permits, that you have everything that you need to zone off where you need to be, that you have your space where you just show up, do your thing and leave. But they're the ones that get it all set. They're the ones that you have everything you need while you're there. If you don't have something, they're the ones who will get it for you. And then when you leave, they're the ones who clean everything up. And they're also the ones that send you to and from. So if you have someone who doesn't really know what they're doing in production management, or they're not giving it their full attention, it could really spiral a whole production, because now you're pulling the producer to help with permits, but then who's going to help get the releases in the field? And then who's going to sit down and do? So you really need to have a good production manager. That's what I think.
I love that answer. I think, just